Happy Monday. Welcome into our Sports First studios. I'm Gabrielle Amado, and on our agenda today, Real Madrid go top of the LaLiga table with a win at Anoeta, but not without its controversies. We dissect the calls that are taking over our Twitter feeds with Thomas Rongen, and to decide, I can't even speak because they're so controversial, if they were right or wrong. Plus, we hear from Quique Setien on the drama. Then we head to Paris as Neymar and Mbappe return to training for the first time today. That is, to see if they can train later in the week. But is Cavani saying bye-bye to the end of the season? We link up with Julien Brun in France for the latest, and Matchday 31 kicks off today in La Liga Santander as we are officially entering the final 8 rounds of the Spanish top flight. We look into our crystal balls and look ahead to Villarreal, Sevilla, Leganés, and Granada, who are all in action today. Sports First starts now. And before we get started, this is a reminder to comment below. Tell us your thoughts about those calls made at Anoeta yesterday, and we will get to them in just a couple of minutes. This is also a reminder to check out our free beIN Extra channel. No contracts needed, no strings attached. This can be viewed on Samsung TV, Pluto TV, and more. And today at 1:45, Alanyaspor takes on Trabzonspor in the Turkish Super League. You guys definitely won't want to miss that. And on beIN Sports and beIN Sports en Español, Villarreal hosts Sevilla at 1:20 p.m. Eastern Time, and Leganés take on Granada at 3:50 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be chatting about both of those games during the tail end of this show. So more to come on that. Let's welcome in one of the hardest working people at beIN Sports, Thomas Rongen, who knows better than anyone what happened this weekend. As a reminder to all of you, we're going to put up the La Liga table standings and show you that Real Madrid are top, tied on points with Barcelona, but of course they have the head-to-head, which puts them in first place once again on the La Liga table. And Thomas, I want to begin with yesterday's match. We'll get to those controversial calls in just a minute, but I wanted to ask you, was Zinedine Zidane right to start maybe the likes of James over Hazard and not put Asensio and put Vinicius instead of Asensio? What were your thoughts on his starting 11?
He's one of the best in the business to throw curveballs almost every weekend with one player that everybody goes, really? Rodrigo last week over Bale, over Asensio, over James. And here's James not being part of this squad in terms of playing for 247 days. So yes, a huge surprise. But one of the luxuries he has right now, he has a block of 9 to 10 players that consistently will start for him. So now you can tinker, depending on the opponent. You can alter your thinking a little bit. And if Isco is not injured, he might start. He's able to rest Hazard, and he all of a sudden comes with James, and not only throws me a curveball, but the opponents as well. Was James good on the day? Not particularly. But again, giving players confidence and keeping the whole group, that 18 players that are so huge, always an opportunity, with the exception of Bale, by the way, is very important. So, yes, a bit of a surprise. They get the win at the end of the day, and Zidane looks again masterful.
Does this tell me that James is over Bale in the pecking order, which is just astonishing? But like you said, it was James' first minutes in La Liga since October. Their 1-0 loss to Mallorca, but he does get the start over the likes of a Bale, who's just featured once for 15 minutes. Does this now put him above Bale in the pecking order?
No, not necessarily. It wouldn't surprise me if Bale will start the next game with Hazard again coming back in the lineup with Benzema. I think what Zidane has done, as I said again, he's looked at the right side right now where he has options. It could be Isco. One game he played out of a 4-4-2 with Valverde up high and Kroos a little bit higher without a winger. So he can go with the winger depending on what he sees as far as the opponents go. Training is important, who looks sharp as well. And again, he's got the luxury to plug in one guy in a position that might cause a match-up problem, we call that, with the opponent. And he keeps that in mind. So, hey, pretty good if you get 10 guys you can rely on and one position up high, not in the back, which could cause you some problems that you can use to your advantage. James didn't perform pretty well, but don't look at Asensio coming off the bench, getting an assist. Look at Bale still figuring in as well, so it wouldn't surprise me if Bale gets a start. I don't think there's a pecking order on that right side. It depends on form, and it depends on the opponent.
Right, Zinedine Zidane always providing us with a surprise. I want to hit the comment section here. John Stiles saying everyone saw the bogus calls and still wow. And that is where we're going to head to next on our conversation. A lot of you saying that the feed started a little bit late on Facebook. We're going to dissect the calls, the controversial calls that were made yesterday. So comment below. Let us know your opinion, and we'll get to them throughout the show. Thomas, I want to begin with the penalty that wasn't, the one on Marcelo. Nothing was called here. Marcelo very upset at the non-call. For you, was this and should this have been a penalty?
And this one is actually more a penalty than later on the Vinny penalty. And there is contact. There's contact with the hip, the upper body a little bit. There's a little contact on the lower leg. Play goes on. But you know what? It registers in the referee. The referee is another component, a tactical component. Can you get the referee on your side? And Real Madrid, the ability to break into the box and create those kind of situations for opponents where they have to make some contact, forces a referee to, we call that a make-up call. So the Vinny call might have been a make-up call because of the Marcelo situation. And that is very important too. How does a team also utilize the referee in their favor and make an advantage for them? So important. Good teams do that. Good coaches do that as well. And as I said again, Real Madrid, the benefactor right now of 3 or 4 little fouls before that led to a Vinny penalty that was eventually called.
Yeah, let's take a look at that Vinny penalty. So you say that the Marcelo, there was more to the Marcelo one that wasn't called than the Vinny one, but perhaps the referee with that non-call on Marcelo in his mind, which forced him to point to the spot in this one. Because there's certainly, this is a light one. This is a light one, Thomas.
It is a light one. And what Vinny does so well, because in this situation, Gab, technically, he does everything that's the opposite of how he should finish. This is a short backswing and tuck it away. The backswing is really high. He actually, Vinny, initiates the contact a little bit with the trailing defender. But you know what? The referee gives it in Vinny's favor, and then Ramos steps up and sets another incredible record at 0-0. Ice in his veins and eventually ice on his knee. But this was not a vintage Madrid performance, but another situation where they can just ref it up in the second half, as they've done against Valencia, create a little chaos in the 18-yard box gap, and with that, forcing the referee in making some very, very 50-50 calls that once went against them and once went in their favor.
Yeah, and like you said, a historic goal for Sergio Ramos, who did step up and take that PK. He is the top scoring defender in La Liga Santander with 68 goals. Only 12 of them are penalties, so really quite a feat for Sergio Ramos, who is now Real Madrid's penalty kick taker. But those 2 calls were not the only controversies. There's 2 more at Anoeta, which has Barcelona fans fuming, has Quique Setién fuming, who we'll hear from hopefully in just a couple minutes. But Thomas, the next one, Januzaj's goal, quite a great goal, disallowed because of obstruction to Courtois' view. Are you buying this one?
Yeah, I do buy this one, because by the law of the letter of the law, this is interfering, we call that, with the goalkeeper. And yes, it's a great strike. The assistant referee on the lower end immediately raises his flag. He knows the laws of the game. And the referee obviously blows the whistle. They go to VAR, so they got a linesman correct, the referee made the correct decision, and VAR doesn't overrule it, because the letter of the law says if you interfere with the sight of the goalkeeper, then the goal doesn't stand. So that was, again, the correct decision, as controversial it might have seemed from a distance. By the letter of the law, this is an offside situation and a goal that was correctly disallowed.
And last but not least, Karim Benzema's goal, viewed by VAR for a handball, perhaps, in question in the box. They ultimately deemed it was on the shoulder. But again, was this the right call?
I don't know if this was the right goal, Gap. It's almost impossible. We've looked at it from so many angles. VAR looks at it from so many angles. VAR has got a much better view than we get here from the TV. VAR's got 6, 7, 8, 9 different angles to look at that. They can freeze frame things as well. And again, the goal stands initially, so it becomes very hard for VAR in a 50-50 to overrule the referee, so to speak. So they err on the caution of saying, you know what, let's stick with this play. This could have gone either way. Impossible to tell with my clear eyes, based on what I've seen here, if it was a handball. But saying that, the way he manipulates the ball away from the defender and then finishes, let's give kudos to the best informed number 9 in La Liga right now. And again, with the winner, Benzema, big time.
And Steve Biambi in our comment section perfectly teased me up for where I want to bring this conversation next, because Barcelona fans obviously fuming over these decisions that they appear and they believe went in favor of Real Madrid, perhaps insinuating that the league or the referees are all teeing Real Madrid up to win La Liga Santander. Steve Biambi saying, I hope that Barca fans are not talking. Let's talk about when Messi shoved that Sevilla player, Diego Carlos, and didn't get booked. That was ridiculous, or that was a red card, he says. And I want to bring that up. So Barca fans obviously not unhappy with the way that VAR was used here against Real Sociedad. But should Barcelona fans be perhaps counting their blessings that Lionel Messi didn't see red when he very clearly hit the face of Diego Carlos? Of course, Diego Carlos embellished quite a bit, rolling on the ground, not exactly necessary. But there was a shove there, and that may have been reason for a red card, Thomas.
Yeah, let's first just state this debate, which goes way back before I even was born, is divided, among lines. That means you get the Barcelona and the Real Madrid fraction. That will never go away. There will always be controversy depending on what happens, obviously. Some side with Madrid, some side with Barcelona, along party lines, as you can see in politics as well. And reputation is so important. Let's be real honest. If this is Sergio Ramos, it's a direct red. But Mr. Messi only had 2 red cards in his career. One actually came off the field, both with Argentina. Never a red card in La Liga, which is unbelievable, by the way. In the last 10, 11, 12 years, he's been there. The letter of the law, it's a straight red card. The big thing here, I think, is at the end is he didn't get anything. If he gets shown a yellow, I think it will appease the audience. It would appease me. Now I have a feeling, wait a minute, are there different standards for different players? Which there are, by the way. I've coached, I've played. I know there are different standards. When Thomas Rongen would kick somebody, it was a yellow. If George Best, Nene Kubias would do it, they wouldn't get a yellow. Because reputation, as a hard man, precedes you. And referees are instructed before the game to look at the bad guy, so to speak, and don't allow him to get away with anything. Messi doesn't fall in that category, but again, by the letter of the law, it's a push. It's in the face, neck area, no questions, a red card. But if it ends up being a yellow, I think that people will not have this discussion right now. Right,
but the fact that it was absolutely nothing leads us to believe that perhaps there is some favoritism or, the referees looked the other way because it was Lionel Messi. Like I said earlier in the show, Quique Setién not happy with the decisions made yesterday in Real Madrid's favor, so to speak. Let's hear what he has to say.
Nosotros hay cosas que no podemos controlar y que realmente no dependen de nosotros, ¿no? A nosotros nos vale con tratar de ganar los partidos, hacer lo que tenemos que hacer. Sobre el partido de ayer, todo el mundo ha visto cómo ha sido y cada uno sacará las conclusiones y hará las valoraciones que crea oportunas. Es entendible que pensemos que por qué unas acciones se revisan, el propio árbitro las revisa y otras no, ¿no? En unos partidos sí, en otros no, y esto es lo que realmente uno puede pensar que no se está utilizando bien.
Well, VAR was used pretty well when it wasn't used to ship off one of your best players on the pitch against Sevilla on Friday. Thomas, what do you make of Quique Setién's comments? And then also what Zinedine Zidane said after the match. Very annoyed. Zinedine Zidane, who we see usually very well composed, but he kind of let out his frustration a bit, saying, it's as if we weren't playing on the pitch. It's as if we weren't the better team, that everyone always focuses on the referee's decisions. As a coach, are you in favor of coming out and speaking about the referee's decisions, or is it best to just not say anything at all?
Some coaches use psychology, gamesmanship, so to speak, to their advantage, either on the pitch or in the media as well. And I think this will continue. A little surprised by Zidane, who normally is very even-keeled, who normally after the game said all the right things. Didn't hammer the referee, didn't get drawn into was the right or wrong decision. Clearly, Barcelona right now is trying to needle Real Madrid and Zidane in making some comments that you can use, we call that, as something you put in the locker room. You know, I always looked at quotes from players and opponents and coaches. And if there's something controversial saying, oh, DC United, that's going to be an easy game for us, I would make it in bold, put it in the locker room and say to the guys, look at this quote, by the way, from Ramos. Look at this quote from Piqué. There's no respect there. In order for me to motivate my team, we won't see the end of it till there's 8 games more played because it's part of the gamesmanship. But surprised that Zidane obviously got drawn into that. And Setien, a man right now that is not sure of where he wants to go in his media conference after the game because they played very poor. Again, Suarez not great on the day, but plays 90 minutes. Late substitutions, wrong substitutions. No Fati. He used 3 substitutions. And Griezmann comes in with like 10, 15 minutes left. It's almost impossible to make an impact. So, again, that starting 11, a big question mark. His substitutions, big question mark. And by the way, they've not gotten better under Setien on the road. And that's still a worry. With or without fans, they still have to travel. And they haven't been particularly good.
Yeah, definitely worrisome that Messi has now played 90 minutes for 3 consecutive matches, and you have a Luis Suarez who's recovering from injury who played 90. Thomas, you think that he probably should not have played the full 90, but we're going to put a pin on this conversation. We'll get back to La Liga, and we're going to head to France because I want to welcome in Julien Brun because we have breaking news in France, guys. PSG have officially returned to their training ground today. They are going to undergo physical and medicals to return to training on Thursday. Is that correct, Julien? What's the latest?
Yes, absolutely. This is what is happening in France. As we probably know, the Liga didn't restart and the season is over. PSG are already 2020 champions, but there are still issues for them because they have to play the 2 French finals, French League Cup and French Cup finals. So they have to be fit, they have to train a lot for these 2 games. And maybe most important, Gab, is the end of the Champions League in August. So this is a strange end of the season, which is also a start of a season for Paris.
Yeah, it is a very strange time, and I do want to talk about looking ahead to those 2 cup finals and then also to the Champions League restart. Some key players who may not be involved in those matches, and I want to begin the conversation with Edinson Cavani, who has reportedly rejected a 2-month extension that would see him allowed to play in those cup finals and in the Champions League. We all know his contract expires on June 30th, and he has said no. Is that correct, Julien?
You are absolutely correct. He said no because it seems that he's a bit disappointed that he didn't get a new contract, and at the same time he doesn't want to get injured for his new team. So absolutely, he said he doesn't want to continue for the next 2 months and possibly win the Champions League with the club. We have to remind that he's the top scorer, all-time top scorer of Paris Saint-Germain, which is quite strange because I can't say every fan is disappointing today, but we may say that a lot of people that like PSG and always loved Cavani as their leader, the Matador as he's been called here, a lot of people are quite disappointed that this guy who was so important for so many years said, I don't want to get injured to have a last good contract. So it's quite strange of an end for Cavani, and we must say it's the same kind of situation with Thomas Meunier, but same kind of situation because Meunier is obviously not Cavani in terms of importance as the top scorer.
Right, and interestingly enough, I mean, Meunier, he is in talks with Borussia Dortmund, and so at least we know that there's a destination for him in the works. But with Cavani, he doesn't have anything done on pen and paper. Which clubs is he talking to? I mean, we know that he was linked with Atletico Madrid, but that has seemed to fizzle out. Mm-hmm. So where is he planning on going? Is there any news on that?
If you have any news, I would like to have them as well. There are still talks with Atletico. That's what I've read. But maybe he could go to England as well, because we know there are big teams that are still waiting for big forwards. So there were talks with Manchester United at the time. So we don't know. But one thing is almost for sure he won't stay in Paris, and it would be really strange to see him. He has spent 7 years in Paris, and there are maybe the most 2 important months for Paris since he's arrived, and he won't be there, and he will talk with other teams, which makes a quite strange end of a career with an important team for a very important player.
Yeah, and just like you said, a historic time for PSG, who have looked the best maybe ever in the Champions League, and now they're going to restart it, and Cavani wants no part. It's very strange. But 2 players who will be involved are Kylian Mbappe and Neymar. Any word on their future, or is everyone kind of calmed down as it looks like they're going to stay put for another season?
For the moment, everybody's calm about it. We know that there has been a soap opera almost each summer since Neymar has arrived. Will he go to Barcelona or not? The fact that Barcelona doesn't have a lot of money means that he should stay in Paris for at least 1 year. And it's a kind of the same situation for Mbappe, or maybe Mbappe could go to Real Madrid because they would have the money. But almost for sure, PSG board will say, no, you will stay here. And what is said here in France is that they won't leave for Spain or for England this summer. But most important is that Leonardo, the technical director, sporting director of PSG, wants them to sign another contract and to be linked with the club for 2 or 3 more years. So for the moment, the summer should be calm, but you know, we're still end of June. There's still a lot of time to go, and we will see as well what will happen in the Champions League in August, and that may change things for both of them, for Neymar and for Kylian Mbappe.
Most definitely. And speaking of August, is there a date set in stone for Liga to return? And also, I wanted to know if there was any update on how many teams would be involved in the league, because as we know, Toulouse and Amiens were supposed to be relegated, but the court did rule that an unlawful relegation, but the league hasn't accepted those terms, so it's all very confusing. Could you give us some clarity?
I will try to. Welcome to France. But for example, to make sure, it's not sure 100%, but the French league decided to have a league that comes from 18 to 20 clubs for next season and next 4 seasons. It still has to be signed, but it means that probably Toulouse and Amiens will play in the 2nd division, and the Ligue 1 will start with 20 clubs. And the date of the start of the season should be the weekend the Champions League and the Europa League will be over. So this will be a really strange situation for French football, because as you know, we are waiting for our French league since mid-March, and it should restart the same exact weekend that the Champions League will finish. So maybe we will have PSG in the Champions League final, or Lyon in the Champions League final, and the French league would restart on the same day. It should be on August the 21st, on Friday, the day of the Europa League final.
Wow, really strange times indeed. Thank you as always, Julian, for the fantastic information. I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon. Let's welcome Thomas back into the show. We have 3 minutes on the clock. Time always flies when we're having fun here on Sports Burst. Very briefly, though, Thomas, I wanted your take on the Cavani situation, a player who has done so much for a club. In the tail end of his career, we know it's coming to an end, but refuses a 2-month contract extension when he could be after the Champions League title that he himself has craved for so long. What do you make of it?
It's the nature of the business. I mean, look at Timo Werner. Timo Werner signed with Chelsea, can play for Leipzig, by the way, in the Champions League, and said, no, I'm not. This situation is a little bit different, obviously, because Cavani and also Meunier are leaving. 2 very important players. Kurzawa, they've extended a contract to, but he hasn't signed yet. So all these lingering issues PSG wants to take care of. And then you can say, does he deserve better treatment? But I don't think that Cavani even wants to stay at PSG. And definitely in those 2 months, if he's seeking other employment, he doesn't want to get injured at his age. And I think that's very important to look at for players right now at a later age. These are still situations, I would love to win a championship, but he's looking at himself right now at his age, staying healthy and being able to play elsewhere for another 2 or 3 years. So that's obviously tough, but not as tough for some of the other challenges that I think PSG has. i.e., by the way, have not played 5 months of competitive football before they go to Lisbon and have to play a game in the UCL. That to me is a bigger issue than losing Cavani because you have depth up front.
Yeah, and that's a conversation that we're going to continue to have over the next 2 months leading up to that Champions League return. Very interesting. We'll see what happens with Cavani, but we do want to head back to La Liga and show you guys a full screen of Match Day 31. This is what is in store on beIN Sports this week, and this is today's first match. Kicks off round 31. Villarreal taking on Sevilla. Our coverage begins at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Definitely don't miss that. And here is that full look at the Match Day. Which game sticks out to you most, Thomas?
Listen, Leganés, of course, they get screwed because of the Braithwaite deal. They get Oscar Rodriguez, worth the admission. And by the way, my former teammate and roommate on the road in 1980, Javier Aguirre, coaches Leganés. So I'm going all in for Leganés.
Yeah, and Leganés is in action this afternoon against Granada, so definitely don't miss that. Thank you guys so much for joining us. From Thomas, Rongen, and myself, we're going to say ciao, ciao, but tune in to beIN Sports starting at 1 o'clock because La Liga continues. Bye.